Here we go.
G'day fans and welcome back to another exciting episode of Rip It Off the Card. We've been away for a couple of weeks and hopefully everybody's had a chance to get pretty sad at our absence, but we've returned. Our dulcet tones and our thoughts and opinions and views, all very exciting stuff. Mr. Aaron, how you going tonight, old son?
The only views that count. I'm going well. How are you?
Oh, I tell you what, I want to know why people are watching us when the last episode of Obi-Wan Kenobi is airing tonight. It's on even as we speak. Why watch us? Clearly that show is far more important. Even I haven't seen it yet. Aaron has. He got on before our broadcaster said, oh my God, it's give me the tingles on the inside. And as we all know, we love it when Aaron gets the tingles. So what's the deal with that, Mr. Aaron? It's like, why would people be watching us when they could be watching that?
I don't know. I guess we're a lot more handsome than that duo of Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen, aren't we?
Oh, geez, I tell you what, I'm a lot more handsome. Oh, goodness gracious. Whenever I see pictures of us, I just think of dartboards already straight away. So there you go. Greg has already watched Obi-Wan and he said, yeah, pass on from that, move on and start watching us. Thomas is happy. Yay, we're back. Yes, we are indeed. So very, very cool, very groovy stuff. Kenobi, cop that if you don't mind, umpire William. So there you go. Yeah, hello there. Very, very cool.
We haven't got a lot of live viewers, but the ones we've got are very loyal, aren't they?
Yes, exactly right, including the Vile, of course, is back. And way up the top is good old Andrew, first one in, and even Dicko's with us. So it's good to see we've got the usual range of dudes who are with us. It is slowly starting to warm up outside, albeit in micro millimeters and increments. But the good news is what is absolutely going hot as is what's occurring in the old Greg King's Cheaper Things. So if you might remember a couple of weeks ago, there was a huge discussion going on with good old Ronnie over in Asia. I assume he's in Asia. Well, haven't we got something to tell you about good old Ronnie? So it's very exciting stuff. But you're going to have to wait until we get to that particular point. What do you reckon there, Mr. Aaron?
Well, there isn't much. There isn't very long to wait, is there? Because this show has very little content.
There you go. Exactly right. We want more Ronnie. Well, you might just get what you wish for. I like this one from the Vile. Minion hats and Hawaiian shirts. Hubba. Oh, goodness gracious me. I could be violated before the end of the episode. You never know. So good stuff. Even Ronnie, no one's ever met the guy, but he's suddenly more famous than us. What's the deal with that? So
I don't know. I tell you what, there'll never be anyone doing the safety dance on this program.
No, exactly right. Now, all right, we're going to kick everything off now. We were away for a couple of weeks, but in the interim, like what we like to say, because Aaron's got his own store, of course, and one of the coolest things that happens is when people who watch this show go and pay Aaron a visit in the store, and such was the case a week or so back when Glennis, otherwise known as Glenn Beatty, who watches us usually from YouTube, came into the store. So he made his trek down from Geelong, and Aaron, being the absolute cool bastard that you are, got him to put on the shirt with my mug all over it. So what was the deal with that, mate?
Yeah, he came down to catch up with you mainly, and of course you were away for the day, so he had to put up with me. But it's always good to meet the riders, so thanks for coming in, Glenn. Sorry to disappoint just me there that day.
That's okay. I'm sure he said, oh, is Dags here? No. Awesome. Oh, no, sorry. I meant to be like showing tears. But no, good on Glennis for popping up. I mean, Geelong is a fairly long hike from where you are. So good on him, like Thomas did from way out in the eastern suburbs some time ago, which is absolutely fantastic. So yay, team, for that. Anyway, we've got a lot to cover off tonight. And of course, we're getting into a bit of the old second part of the Gerry Anderson stuff. So some very groovy things happening. But before we do that, we got to kick it off with a little bit of news. And as you says, what's his name? David Tennant. Is that this guy?
Well, you would know, being such a science fiction doyen. But yes, that's David Tennant.
I knew that. I was just checking, just making sure, because I thought you might have said it was someone called Jody or whatever. Let's get into it. Good stuff. All right, we're going to kick this off. Yes, Morwell. Sorry, I knew it was way out east somewhere, Mr. Thomas, but you're a long way away from where we are. That's absolutely for sure. So there you go. All right, so what are we kicking it off with, Mr. Aaron? There's some stuff coming out from all over the place.
There is. Good to see Joe's here tonight as well, but I'm not sure what order we've got stuff in, but we've got a bit of Lego to look at and some other bits and pieces too.
Indeed we do. And we're kicking it off with a bit of the old Lego. What's the deal with this, Mr. Aaron?
Well, this is interesting, isn't it? It's 90 years of Lego, and because it's 90 years, they're reissuing some of their favourite sets. And wouldn't you know it, some of their favourite sets are some of my favourite sets too. So I might finally be able to buy a Galaxy Explorer mint in box.
So has it been 90 years for Lego? 90 years. That means it came out in what, 1932? It's like,
yeah, when you were a little boy. I think it's interesting. The stuff from that long ago wasn't Lego how we have it now. It's probably only since the 70s and 80s the Lego sets that everyone grew up with and loved existed. Before that, Lego started out as wooden bricks. Did you know that, Dags?
No, but I'm not surprised. It wouldn't have been plastic, that's for sure. So, but I was surprised that when I heard the name, I was like, that must be a mistake. I was like,
they tried to join the wooden bricks together. Do you know what happened? It wouldn't work.
But they had to stick with it. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. I can chuck your jokes right back at you, son. So there you go. And they look at it, and when they finally it does get together, and go, oh, wouldn't you know, it does work. Anyway, let's move on. So they're reissuing a couple of items from 101 years ago, which I thought was kind of bizarre. And of course, they're kicking it off with the ship and the Galaxy Explorer. Why would they have picked this, do you think?
Well, this is probably one of the most desired sets for little boys of a certain age who went into the Lego shops and really, really wanted the Galaxy Explorer, and then, of course, couldn't afford it because it was $90, which was quite a lot back in the 70s and 80s for a toy. Now, this isn't an exact reissue of the original one. There's some stuff changed. When you look in there, you can see it comes with different bricks and different parts from the original, but still it is the first classic Lego set to be released for ages. I think, well, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I thought our friend MPS, who's a lot more into Lego than us, had told us that Lego would never reissue any of the classic Lego sets, the space Lego sets, but it looks like they have. So this is interesting that they're, after years and years, adding to the space Lego line.
Yeah, it's to celebrate the 90th anniversary. It's unusual that they should just do this. I mean, good on them for doing it, I suppose. I mean, as you said, if you missed out on it the first time, here's a chance to get it again. I mean, it came out like 40 years ago, and they've suddenly found a way to go, oh, yeah, we've got all the stickers and the parts and the colors and whatever else. And as Ange mentioned a moment ago, they found the mold machine. So, yeah, good on them for doing it. You do wonder if it's somebody could argue it's a bit of a cash in, but I guess if it sells a lot.
It's their anniversary, so what do? They give us the opportunity to spend even more with them. That's a nice anniversary gift, isn't it?
Yeah, and of course that then prompts the question: if it looks the same as the original one, will people compare the original one to this one and go, "Well, hang on, there's slight discolorations in the blue," and will some people try and pass it off as the real thing from 40 years ago or whatever? I don't know. Just opens up a can of worms for rip-offs and people trying to cash in on it. What do you reckon?
I think, like I said, it is different enough that you would be able to tell the difference. And Lego bricks have changed over the years, so the color is slightly different from original Lego. And now they've gone over to the bricks that biodegrade eventually as well. So you put your bricks together, and over the years they slowly come apart again, don't they?
Which means you got to go out and buy more of the damn thing. So yeah, exactly right. So anyway, if spaceships aren't your go, then go medieval for some castle action. So what do you reckon?
So this is another one of the popular lines, and they haven't added to the medieval line for a while. I remember my son is 16. When he was about 6, they did the last lot of sort of medieval stuff where they did trolls and orcs and knights and stuff like that, I guess to kind of cash in Lord of the Rings before they finally did their own Lord of the Rings stuff. But this is a nice castle, and if you've been holding out to extend your medieval village, this is a really nice addition to it. Again, King Leo, or the Lion's Castle as it's called, and it's one of those things that a lot of fans have been hoping they would do for a while. It is a bit of a double-edged sword, like you say. Do we reissue it and possibly devalue the older sets, or do we bow to popular demand and pressure and sell it to the people who want it? And of course, Lego are always going to sell it to the people who want it. They don't really care too much about keeping the value of your collection, because that doesn't help them at all, does it?
Yeah, I do wonder if this is like a stepping stone to say, oh, if there's a huge demand for this stuff, will they suddenly reissue a lot more of the space sets and the castle sets and whatever? And I agree with you. If you're a kid, and you saw the castle as a kid, you go, oh, mate, having that'd be fantastic. And as Thomas said, it does look good. Yeah, Williams Kroll Castle. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, and yeah, straight to the pool room. Yeah, it's very, very impressive. You do wonder what the motivation and why those sets. Do they have a big board meeting and go over the 50 billion sets they've released over the decades? Why did these two make the cut?
I do wonder how many of these sets are bought by kids and how many of them are bought by guys my age that are just into the nostalgia of it. And also, I think they do just release these every couple of years to keep guys my age happy. You know, they go, oh, they listen to us. They've done a space Lego set.
Yeah, could be too. I like this from Christy. She was like, what have I missed? It's us two talking, so the answer is not much at all. So you've come to the good part because we're showing pretty pictures. So there you go. Very, very groovy. Where are we? All right, we're sticking with the Lego things. And this is also a bit of a classic now. Of course, as we mentioned at the start of the show, a couple of people have joined late. You know, the Kenobi last episode is on tonight, so I don't know why anybody's watching us. But if that doesn't float your boat, maybe this will. Lego sets based on the Kenobi series from part 3.
Well, how fast were they on getting this out into the shops? I've looked, and it is online in some places, and you can buy it. And do you know how they managed to get it out so fast? It's a crap set with no design. It's basically a flat grey piece of landscape with a couple of bits stuck on top, and Anakin and not Anakin, Vader and Obi-Wan. So they've got it out fast, but it wasn't one of those sets that it took a genius to design, was it?
No, and for those who haven't worked it out, the Imperial officer up here is actually Tala, the female. So they haven't actually gone to a lot of trouble to put the hair on the back to make her look female. I thought this was a male character, but you can see it's down here. It's written as Tala. So, and that's obviously her droid, the Ned, whatever it is. So, but yeah, I agree with you. When you look at it and you go, well, that's not the most exciting play set I have ever seen in my entire existence, especially when you compare it, believe it or not, to a castle.
I know, it's kind of crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, and the price tags will probably be equal as expensive too, which is completely nuts. But Jesus Christ, I agree with you, Gather. No, there's nothing wrong with being an adult child. I can't put Rusky Babes' comment on the screen, as funny as it might be. Yeah. All right, sticking with the Star Wars theme. Oh my God, it doesn't end, does it? Lego and Star Wars, they go hand in hand. It's a completely nuts. Is this a new set? Is it? Haven't they ever done an ATT before?
They have done an AT before, but it's one of those things where Lego redesigns stuff over and over, and you can see it is different from the ones they've done previously. This is the 3rd or 4th version they've done of this vehicle, and you can see it comes with different clone troopers and unique ones. The old battle droids are the same. It's got a different design. It looks more tanky at the front. I remember the older one seeming to be a bit more elongated. Comes with a lot of clones to add to your clone army, which people love, and that's why they release stuff from this era, because people will buy them just to add to their armies. And that's kind of a good thing, this set. But when you value Lego sets, you basically can value them by how many minifigures they have. And this set's got a few minifigures, so it's one of those sets that a lot of people will be after. And of course, if you've been building a big army, it's always good to be able to get a couple of these to add to it. It will be a popular set.
I found it interesting. I just noticed there. So it comes with Commander Cody, right? But this sequence, in fact, even these the clone troopers, the color schemes, of course, the ATTEs featured primarily in Attack of the Clones. And at that point, all the clones weren't like anybody really. So they've actually mixed up their minifigs with the ship, and they've like combined 2 movies together. But yeah, so the AT-T, is that what you called it?
I said that just for you because I knew you would love that.
Yeah, or not. I was going to say that's the name of a new alien in the Jedi Council, AT-T. So, and for those who don't know,
don't say it too often. Pop will make a figure of it.
You're exactly right. Now, for those who want to know, ATT is All-Terrain Tactical Enforcer. They didn't even put it on the damn box. They just left it as is. So, yeah, it's very, very cool. Good stuff.
It takes you to tell everyone what it actually stands for when they walk into the shop, doesn't it?
And if people, I love doing that. And I just say, I just nerd everybody out. And then you got to say, what's the name of the carrier that drops them off into battle? And it's the Low Altitude Assault Transport / T, actually. LART T. Yeah, it's like transport. Yeah. Anyway, so Very, very cool. All right. So anyway, so if the Star Wars Lego isn't floating your boat, oh, sorry, it's carrier. I thought that's not right. LAAT/C, which is carrier. Oh, get it right eventually, nerd. I'm sure somebody out there is going, dude, it's carrier, not transport. Very, very cool, or not. Yes. Anyway, so Lego all done and dusted. But if that's not floating your boat, then you've obviously got to go for something that more than meets the eye, and of course, it's the old Transformers.
Now, these are the Transformers that have been coming out for a while. This is, I think, like the third or fourth wave of them since they started releasing them. But I thought this was a particularly good wave because it's got some classic Transformers there. You've got the battle damaged dead Optimus Prime that came from the movie where they kind of killed him off, which is an interesting choice where he's all grey and powered down. He has got the Allspark there to give it just a little bit of colour, and you've got the different hands and different versions that come with it. The other ones in the wave are those sort of iconic looking. Yeah, there you go. He's looking pretty sickly there, isn't he? You can almost hear him coughing.
He's doing a General Grievous. Yeah, exactly right.
That's how I imagine it. The other ones in the line are sort of those ones that went all the cartoons that everybody wanted, but they always sold out fast. So these are going to be pretty popular. This is Soundwave, of course, and it's the classic looking cartoon version. Sort of, I guess, very... what do they call it? It's one of those things where the latest Transformers from the movies almost have too many parts on them that make them the design look too busy and not great. This is the really streamlined version from the cartoon, and I think it makes it actually look a lot better. What do you think about that, Dags?
Yeah.
You don't care, do you?
I'm sorry, but it is slightly rating as a bit of a zero on the give a shit meter from my perspective. But hey, if you like them and Transformers fans like them, good for them.
And this is, of course, Starscream, one of the more complex villains who was always backstabbing and trying to take over and things like that. So you've got, in this wave, 3 of the really iconic major players, and they're very good versions of them that will be sure to sell out really fast and go up and up in value on the secondary market for sure. And there we have the complete wave. So you can see you've got the Transformers, and then you've also got a whole lot of accessories that come with them. So interesting lot of Transformers. We haven't really looked at Transformers very much on the show. Maybe we could do an episode on them. What do you think about that, Dags?
Sounds absolutely fantastic. I don't know why they would have done Optimus as the busted version, though. What the motivation for that, do you think?
Because they've done so many of the normal version, they're always looking for some different version to get fans to buy the same figure they've already bought before. And they're like, oh my goodness, they've done the dying Optimus Prime. That's different from the 30,000 other versions, so we better grab that.
So you're telling me that there are toy companies out there who will intentionally market something that they know isn't worth marketing in the hope that collectors will go out and buy them, right? Because they think, well, I've already done the normal version. We've got to do something completely different. And of course, that just brings me completely to the most obvious one of the lot. This
Useless Pop of the Week.
Oh my goodness gracious me. Where are we going with this one, dude?
I know it's hard to believe, but some toy companies will release any old crap if it belongs to a franchise and whack the name on it. Now, I don't know if you've put the one without the name first, so we can have people have a guess as to what this actually is before we reveal it. But
yeah, actually, I just put the one picture in, so the name will be there. So now, so we're going to show you the picture. Look at the item on the right-hand side, not the left-hand side, which is the box, and try and work out what it is. So if you can, try not to cheat. Oh.
I think if you even read the box, you don't have much of an idea of what it actually is, to be totally honest, because I didn't. This is one of the exclusive pops coming out for Comic-Con. What did you think when I sent you the picture of this one?
Absolute shit. And in fact, I was in the store with you today, and you showed me the picture and you said, this is from Star Wars. I looked at that and go, where? And believe it or not, this is so left field, but it opens up this massive can of worms. Now, a lot of Star Wars fans, I mean, there will be fans out there watching this going, what is that? It's from Star Wars. Take a guess, kids. And let's see, hey, Chrissy's already got the right answer. Yeah, Gavin. Yeah, come on, guys. You're all nerds. You should know this. This is an easy one.
I think Thomas
Muppets Dracula.
Muppets Dracula is closer than Star Wars universe for me. That's for sure. It looks almost like Gundam Wing from a Japanese anime or something.
You know how he said about Funko scraping the bottom of the barrel? This is heading in that direction. And like, he's got a lightsaber, all right? So, and it does appear on screen. That's as far as I'm going with it. And yeah, this is about as left field as you can possibly get. And you can see the name there, AM, which means there's an FM around somewhere. But what is the deal?
Does anyone even know with the name?
Hang on. The Vile has said some obscure Sith from a comic or a game. No, it is actually it's actually on screen. So there you go.
So it was one of those where even if it's a small band of watchers, but we're all fans here. If you can't even get where this is from, when you've got the name of it in the packaging, that is a useless pop. Now, do we want to reveal where it's from?
Yep, go for it.
So earlier in the year, there was a little series that dropped on Disney Plus, and it was called Star Wars, I've forgotten, Visions. Yes, and there was, I think, 10 little mini episodes, and this is one of the scraping the bottom, halfway center of the earth. This is one of the characters from one of the Vision shorts. So that series was actually well received, but it went away to nothing almost straight away. And the fact that not only this, they're releasing a second one from it, which is just as obscure, probably means that they will release anything in the Star Wars universe.
So for those who don't know, it was part of the Lucasfilm thing that they announced last year, which was 2 years ago, whatever it was. So Star Wars Visions was a limited series. It was animated. It's on Disney Plus, and it's based around taking the Star Wars universe, putting into a Japanese animation form. But none of the stories are canon. They've just gone their own direction, done their own thing. And apparently for those I didn't ever watch it because it wasn't canon, so I had no interest in it. But those who watched it said it was quite good. They enjoyed it. It had some very interesting ideas and concepts, and obviously you introduced new characters, and that's where AM, whatever, has come from. So, yes, and I don't think everybody sort of really dialed into it. And as you said, it sort of seems to have come and gone, but that's what Visions was. It's a bit like the what if for the Marvel Cinematic Universe to a large degree.
I watched it, thought it was entertaining, would probably never watch it again and have no idea who that character is from watching it. It was probably one of the main characters out of one of the episodes as well, but it really isn't one that I thought they would ever be releasing any merchandise of.
It's a good point here. I like this one from Musky Babes. There you go, Astro Darth. Someone mentioned earlier about the high heels. I don't know what the deal is with the pink shoes. It would have you'd have to think it's got a very limited sales market just because it's got Star Wars on it. Even Gavin would be going, what's the deal? And I do like someone mentioned about the fact that it looked like Yoda Vader. It does kind of, you can see that, but yeah, DM useless. Yes, it's a bit tragic. What can you say, eh?
Well, do you know what that means? A year from now, we'll have it on our eBay segment, and it'll go for like $500 or $600.
Yes, exactly right. Yes, if they funko dig any deeper, they may strike oil. So, but someone thought it was a good thing to have, and somebody will say, "Yep, I love Visions. I've got to have this. I've got to have Am, whoever Am is." And good luck to them. But yeah, right. If they start introducing other characters from this series, you'll be going, "Oh my God, where are we going with this?" But yes, useless pop of the week, absolutely. When Star Wars fans don't even know what it is, you know you're heading down the dark path, as it were. So very, very cool. Speaking of dark, what?
I was just agreeing. Yes.
Oh yeah. Speaking of dark paths, this is an absolute crack up. So it's been a couple of weeks since we did this, but it's now time for something very, very interesting. You won't believe what has happened in 2 weeks. It's time for this. All right, so it's Greg King's Cheaper Things. And before we get into the really exciting part, apparently you've got something that you've either ordered or has turned up. Is that correct?
Well, I ordered some stuff. We haven't had anything turn up for a while, so I thought I'd better start ordering some other old crap. Excuse me, Greg King has started ordering some other old crap so we can do reviews of it on the show. So it's one of those iconic pieces that I think any nerd would probably, if they didn't want it, they'd appreciate while other people wanted it. What did you think of this item, Dags?
Yeah, it was all right. Hang on. Angie's asked, did you get Audrey too? Definitely not. And it's not one of those things at all. But we're going for something particularly groovy and cool, especially with some MCU movies coming out soon. It is the old Infinity Gauntlet. How good is this?
Now, this is amazing. I've have such a good rapport with the people at AliExpress that I've decided I'm going to get no Hobbit Home, no Audrey 2. I decided, how could I pass up on a $12 Infinity Gauntlet? And I mean, that Infinity Gauntlet is damn good. From the description, it lights up. It's got LED lights. You can pick the Iron Man version, or you can pick the original Thanos version. It's one of the most iconic pieces of popular culture that's probably been introduced to cinema in the last decade. I mean, most people would know what it was, and I thought that was a bargain for $12.
Love it.
So, as you can see, it's got all the pictures of all the different versions you can get. Now, I'm probably thinking I'm more likely to get a rubber dishwashing glove with like Infinity Stones like drawn on it than anything that resembles what they're showing there. But you never know. You never know. I think the Soul Greg King has found quite a good item. You get what you paid for. That's one of the things that Ronnie has definitely been drumming into us over the last couple of weeks. So, yeah, I thought that was a nice little find, and we'll see if this actually turns up. And maybe if it does, we can snap away all the other crap items we've bought.
So, yes, it is an interesting sort of argument. You are getting what you paid for, but the picture they're showing, it should at least look like the picture, even though, as Ronnie was saying a couple of weeks ago, well, you look at a McDonald's hamburger in a picture and it looks nothing like that when you first get it. So it's an interesting argument. Speaking of which, and the glove will be well used as well. Well, yes, indeedy, doody. In fact, if it does turn up and it does look semi-decent, I can imagine people coming in saying, I don't want to be a rider of the week. I just want to put on the glove. How good will that be?
Yeah.
So, yes.
Okay,
you'll get a Batman glove. Sorry?
I guess before we go on to the next part, just have to say there's some conversations I've had with Ronnie. Not all of them I can make public because he has expressed some worries with me that if it gets back what he's doing, he could be in a little bit of trouble. So we've skipped over some of that. I guess it's just between you and us. So you guys won't tell anyone, will you?
Absolutely. All quiet. All very, very quiet. So now, for those who've been following this particular story, there was a discussion where Ronnie actually put forward the idea of reviewing having his own segment or reviewing products on the show. So there's been a bit of correspondence between Aaron and Ronnie. I'm going to kick this off. There's 3 sections. I've got the other 2 sections covered over, so I'm going to reveal them as we go along. Yeah. So Mr. Aaron, get ready to do some reading. You will absolutely love this, kids. Let's get into it.
So, as Dag said, we had a bit of a discussion with Ronnie, and I got to him. Hi, Ronnie. I would be happy to give you a trial on one of our old arrivals and see how you would review it. And then if this is successful, we can do it regularly, once a week. It depends if you want to do it regularly and maybe become as famous as the Soul Greg King. We might not get items every week, so I'm not sure myself how often you would have to do a review. All the best, Aaron. Now, like I said, I've cut that a bit with what I said because there was more in there, but you get the gist of things, don't you, Dags?
So the irony would be you'd say to Ronnie, can you review the items that you personally have received? And of course, you can't do that because you haven't received anything. So what do you reckon Ronnie would say to that? He's been dangled this carrot, Infinity Gauntlet-shaped carrot, or it could be an Audrey 2-shaped carrot or a Hobbit Home-shaped carrot. Maybe, maybe not. Let's see what Ronnie had to say.
I like to think it's a Greg King-shaped carrot. But there you go. Hi, Aaron. I'm happy to give regular review. I have one issue. Hope it is okay. I will only be able to give good reviews because if I get product from us, I will review it and I review it and say it is a piece of crap. Others may not buy it. I will try and be honest, but only in a positive way. If this is a problem, please let me know. Ronnie.
So how does that work? If it's from us, it's always got to be good, right? And he's got to, but that's not being honest. He's actually contradicted himself there, saying, "Oh, if it's from us, I can't say it's crap, even if it is." So
he's only going to give positive, honest reviews. So I don't know if that means if we get a piece of crap that he just doesn't review it, or I can tell the way this is going, everything's going to be a good review, isn't it?
Yeah, I love it. No, I'd like to shove that carrot. And every letter in that statement is wrong. Absolutely. So everything has to be a good review. You'll positively give negative positivity. So what did Aaron have to say about that?
Hey, Ronnie, that is no problem at all. We already have viewers who want to hear your reviews, good, bad, or lucky. I will send you some pictures for you to look at. One is what I expected, which is a set of Stargate bookends, and one is what I got. It is a crap bracelet with butterflies on. What do you think? So I sent him some stuff we already had so he could give me an idea of the reviews he might get. And I explained to him with the pictures that I had ordered this Stargate bookends, which looked fantastic. And when we got them, for those who remember, we got this really crappy 5-cent bracelet or necklace with little butterflies on.
Yeah, it's about as close to being about as wrong as you could possibly be. So with that in mind, fans, Greg King's Cheaper Things has now been given the How's Your Father. Give it the lemon and SARS. It is now time for Ronnie Woo's product review.
So here you go, Ronnie. This is your first review, mate. I think you're going to live or die by your words, but I don't think Greg King's in any trouble yet of losing his popularity on the show, but we'll see how it goes.
All right, so we're talking about a bracelet. Remember, it was supposed to be the Stargate bookends and it was a bracelet. What does everybody think Ronnie's going to say about this bracelet? Yes, you are right. It is so pretty. Do you reckon he's going to have to lie through his teeth? Or do you reckon every word that comes out of his mouth is going to be pure honesty? I'm looking at it right now. It's so funny. All right, so everybody, hang on. Yes, very, very cool. All right, let's see what Ronnie Woo had to say about this fantastic, or was it shitty bracelet? Go for it.
This product is better than you could have possibly expected. It is not some boring space bookend that takes up so much room on the shelf and collects a lot of dust and is hard to clean. It is a gold-colored bracelet with butterflies. It is good. It is so good. It is so lucky. This is going to impress the woman in your life. If it's for your wife, it will make her happy. If it's for your daughter, she will think you are the best father. If it's for girlfriend, she will know you spare no expense on her happiness. Gold-colored medals are very lucky and will be envy of all your friends. Butterflies are also lucky. So you could call this a double lucky item. I give this product 10 out of 10 scores.
And it was actually the wrong item that you should have got. So how about that?
I don't think Ronnie's taking into account that it was the wrong item. He's just reviewing the item that we got.
So he's actually said that when you ordered the Stargate bookends, which is what you wanted, and you received a necklace with butterflies on it, he's actually saying that's a good thing. We did a good thing for you, and you should be happy. And of course, if you got a wife and a daughter and what's the other female one, they'll all love it because it is so lucky. How about talking your own rubbish? What's the deal with that?
Well, that wasn't even from them. So I think we're going to have a roller coaster of a ride of reviews with things that turn up from Ronnie. He is going to leave no stone unturned when it comes to positively painting everything in a good light.
How about that? So I bet everybody who's looked at that said, oh, we've got to have more Ronnie reviews. They are absolutely spectacular. So there you go. Thomas, he's missing the whole point. Do you think so? Absolutely. And I agree with you. Keeping Ronnie on staff. All he could write was positivity. It's just, it just makes me feel better, doesn't it? It makes you worth getting up in the morning, don't you think?
It does. I would almost like to send him a picture of something that is impossible to find anything good about and see if he reviews it good, but we'll see what happens.
Oh, how's this one from Christy? He's a single, lonely virgin. He wonders why he's single. How do we know he's single with bracelets like that? He could be having it take a number of weight in the queue, ladies.
Now, just remember, Ronnie will probably watch this, so let's not be so hard on Ronnie. I think it's probably a cultural thing of how they're selling stuff and also where he works. And like I said, didn't hear from him for about a week because he was a bit worried about the whole situation. But he's gone and taken the plunge and is now part of the Rip It Off the Card family.
Yes, exactly right. So he's probably going to say he has a bevy of bathing beauties out in his backyard ready to go at a moment's notice. He's just got to dangle a necklace and they're all good to go. One butterfly represents each one of his conquests. Yeah. Anyway, so there you go. Very, very cool. And that's just to finish off the segment because some people like looking at
we haven't had anything new arrive this week, and just a little bit of dialogue with Ronnie. Let's see where this goes. It's an interesting journey we've started. I think you'll agree.
Yeah, exactly right. And as we said, no Hobbit home and no Audrey 2 as yet. But one thing we do have, which is unbelievably exciting, is the return of the old Lord Vial File. What do you reckon there, Mr. Aaron?
Well, I'm probably going to think because I've already seen it, so I know that we've had a week off, so it's going to be something particularly vile this week. What were you thinking, Dags? Did you think it would be as vile as it's become?
Oh, I don't know, mate. I mean, there's always good time. It was always time for a bit of a violation. What can I say? So we're kicking it off with some correspondence. Is that right?
Yeah, we've got a couple of letters to the vile file. It's like apart from Ronnie, it's the only segment that ever gets any correspondence. So,
I like this one from Gavin. Yeah, the Stargate bookends are currently on his desk. Oh, that's an absolute classic. I really, really like that. So, yes, very, very cool. All right, so we've got some correspondence. So away we go.
Dear Master Vile, being the artist you are, I was wondering if you could do a segment on gross animations, like the gross close-ups you would see in the Ren and Stimpy show. If you do, I will dedicate myself to the dark path of the Sith from George Cant.
Well, there you go, eh? So, and I think you've got a picture of this. Oh, here we go. Check this out. Wait, so what are you trying to say here, Mr. Aaron?
So we're going to be looking at, I think the Vile sent us a whole lot of Vile's gross gallery. It's from his personal art collection.
Very, very cool. And I think, so go for it, old son.
So we're starting off with the request, which was Ren and Stimpy. So I don't know how many people here have watched Ren and Stimpy. I was watching it all day, actually, just to become acquainted with what the Vile had sent us. And I forgot that in the middle of Ren and Stimpy, they often do an extreme close-up with heaps of detail, which is usually a grossed out thing to make the kids laugh and clap. So some of these are quite revolting. So, of course, they're going to be in the Vile's art gallery.
Very good. Now, we also got a letter from Glenda. When did you want me to put that up?
I think we're out of order. That was first. So we can probably do that letter still.
Yep. All right. So that's part of it. So we're going to continue on with the Ren and Stimpy thing. But in the interim, we also got another bit of correspondence.
Yeah. Dear Lord Vile, I have been watching old episodes of the Vile File, and I haven't been so disgusted by an internet segment for a long time. I had to watch them all. Keep up the good work. Any chance of more postcards from Disneyland to see what Pooh is up to from Glenda? And the Vile hasn't been back to Disneyland for a while because of the lockdowns and travel and all of that kind of thing. But he did find another cosplay there of someone doing a Winnie the Pooh, which probably would be on the Vile File at some point. So we will look at that, Glenda, if you're watching. And if you have any suggestions for the Vile or for any Vile topics, feel free to let me or Dags know.
So when Glenda said that, she found that it was the most disgusting thing she's seen on the internet, well, you don't forget, we have been told that we are depraved minds. So we don't like to disappoint. What can I say?
True. So let's get back to the Vile's art gallery.
Indeed. So off we go.
So in Ren and Stimpy, you can see there was some extreme, I guess it's almost body horror, but it's extreme close-ups of different body parts. And we can see here whenever Ren or Stimpy had anything wrong with them, the animators were not so shy on giving us a close-up of what exactly that was. Now, it could be pink eye, or it could be a toothache, or it could be damaged teeth, or it could be halitosis and a cracked mouth. But they're all prints and originals that would go up on the wall in the Vile Villa, and they're quite an interesting bunch of pictures. You never watched Ren and Stimpy, did you, Dags?
No. Is this Ren down here?
It is, yes.
You can tell Ren's obviously a Collingwood supporter. So.
So this is all Ren again. And the thing that's interesting, when they're sort of one per episode as just a blip, you don't really notice. But when you gather them all together like the Vile has and put them up on one of the walls in his house, they probably are quite revolting. Here's some Ren looking, getting up early and not looking great. And then he's got, again, some conjunctivitis with stuff growing out of it. You've got, I guess that's a younger Collingwood supporter there, isn't it? With the pup. It almost looks, there's a science fiction movie, I think it's called The Spawn or something, where the aliens have a mouth like that. And then the one on the side is Ren looking particularly maniacal, which is a nice one too. So they're all great images that the Vile has sent us through, but it gets worse.
You should have learned, Rusky Babes. You don't eat your chow when you're watching this episode. Oh, here we go. I like this. Yeah, it's the Logie's after party. Yeah, absolutely fantastic.
the great thing, Russell, is there's some food pictures coming up that'll probably put you off your food completely. Now, don't think that Ren was the only one that got these close-ups. You can see that Stimpy has got some close-ups there as well. For those who don't know Ren and Stimpy, Ren was almost the one that was right on the edge, and Stimpy was his lovable but dumb companion. So you've got Stimpy there, again, with the damaged teeth. Obviously, they're British. I can say that because I'm British myself, so I'm not being racist. And then you've got, again, Stimpy with looks like conjunctivitis or has been up too late, but not the greatest looking of cartoon characters, and all on a kid show aimed at the before school market.
Yeah, it sort of looks a bit like the old Meet the Feebles characters, if you remember from that. So, yes.
Yeah. So do you know what Stimpy is looking at there, Dags, at the top?
No.
That is his collection of nose goblins, which would be actually boogers that he picks out of his nose and hides underneath a chair, and then turns the chair over to look at his collection once in a while. Down the bottom there, you've got a particularly fetching young lady that featured on the show. But one of my favourite ones, and I haven't put the result of Ren when Ren bit it. They have a wrestling match, and the wrestler's one weakness is the huge blister on his toe, which Ren and Stimpy are getting absolutely hammered until Ren decides to bite that and pop it. So if you're eating your dinner, Russell, I hope you're not having anything with sauce.
I'm not eating dinner, and even I'm starting to lose my lunch. So
now we're moving away. We got the request from Ren and Stimpy, but it's interesting. Chad, who I worked with, was mentioning that SpongeBob SquarePants also had these horrible close-ups as well. And I never really watched this, so I didn't really know about this. And then when the Vile sent me all these pictures, they turned out to be as vile or even more vile than Ren and Stimpy. And I did not know SpongeBob was quite that intense a show.
There you go. Oh, here we go.
So again, whenever SpongeBob is under the weather, not looking great, or just like someone said there, looking like a meth head, they often did an extreme close-up of him in various degrees of degradation, looking like probably he's already been violated before he was on this segment.
Absolutely love that. Yes, there's a violation going on right before your very eyes, kids.
Now, we're not showing you anything rude there. I don't want you to think that there's anything rude. SpongeBob's best friend is Patrick, the starfish, or the sea star, as they call them now, because starfish isn't in the vernacular. So that's one of his arms. It's not anything rude. And then also that's one of his armpits that he's about to put a Band-Aid on, that Weeping Legion. And then you've got another one of SpongeBob looking quite interesting down the bottom there. And I don't know do you know who SpongeBob's pet is, Dags?
No
it would
idea.
be Gary the sea snail. And there's one episode there where someone stood on one of his eyes and mashed him up, and they again did a close-up of that. So that's not going to traumatize any of the kiddies, is it?
I've got to ask, Rusky Babes, how's your dinner going, son?
Yeah, this is the one just for you. Now, SpongeBob worked on and off at Krabby Patties, and they were always trying to get the secret formula and steal the secret formula from other players. And they went through many different burgers. Now, I haven't done them so huge because some of the detail on them with the maggots and the writhing vermin is quite disgusting. So you've got some close-ups of some of the burger creations, and then you've got some of Squidward eating it and the close-up of his face. And I think the juxtaposition of having very colourful and happy animation with these intense gross outs is probably a bigger shock in SpongeBob than it is in Ren and Stimpy.
Yes, what we were saying about Ronnie earlier about saying McDonald's burgers don't look the same in real life as they do with the pictures.
So here's some more of the close-ups from SpongeBob with more of the burgers. I thought what was really interesting there was Gary's bowl of food, which is basically congealed in Aspen or something awful, and close-ups of some of the other characters there. It is funny how animators really love to give everyone really gnarly bad teeth. It's like no one in the animated universe actually washes or floshes or brushes.
Love it. So what are you trying to say about these particular bits of artwork in the Vile Villa there, Mr. Aaron?
Well, he's got a wall there of amazing artwork, and I'm sure there's more art on the other walls. But for tonight, Ren and Stimpy and SpongeBob SquarePants have been well and truly violated.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Oh, you got to love that, don't you? Eh? Something for absolutely everyone. Very, very cool. These are actually like those weirdo model kits from the 60s. Oh, what are you looking for? I wouldn't mind trying to find a weirdo model kit.
They're like the Roth, almost rap think kind of images, I think.
I love it. The Vile's even asking, so where's the gross stuff I sent? We're not in the business of showing gross stuff there, Mr. Vile. We're just showing real stuff that happens to be gross.
You've got to remember,
what do you reckon?
My email account has got a filter for the particularly vile stuff that you sometimes send.
Very, very good. All right, well done, kiddies. Well, it's time to get a bit of interactive stuff going on here. So let's get ready to put some prices on the board. And you'll put up like 50 cents before we've even pressed this next button. So let's go for it.
Ooh, baby, do you know that's what...
All right, kids. So where are we going to tonight with this, Mr. Aaron?
So I thought, as we've just had a cartoon gallery, that we would do items that are based on cartoons. Now, there was one here that isn't from a cartoon, but most of them were based on cartoon franchises. So everyone grew up and will probably know the cartoons these items are from. Will you be able to guess how much they're worth, though?
Well, there's like Andrew said, 75 cents, and Thomas said 6,000 before we've even shown the items. But anyway, have a bit of a think about it, kids, and see how you go. Can you guess how much this sold for?
So this is the one item that really wasn't from a cartoon. This is a rare 1997 Sega World Sonic Sally Acorn plush toy, 16 inches tall. So it's, I don't know if you remember Sega World up in Sydney when they opened it, and it was there for maybe about 10 years and then it disappeared again, but there was a lot of exclusive stuff. So I guess this is like buying an exclusive plush from Disney or something like that.
Yeah, it's funny that it says rare and vintage. 1997 for most of us old parts doesn't seem that vintage. Vintage, you got to go back to the 50s and the 60s. But yeah, so if it is exclusive, then fair enough. But clearly 16 bids went into this, and we'll sort of see how it goes. So Colin has said $45. Gavin is at $11.38. Christy is at 16. Jonathan, good old Jonathan's joined the show, which is absolutely fantastic. 225. Oh, that's a lot for a friggin' Sonic bloody Acorn plush toy. But you never know how weird and wacky these things go. That's $2, I think it is, for a Greg King. And William has said 55, which is particularly groovy. The word rare in uppercase letters usually tends to give things away, but by the same token, 1997, who really gives a rat's ass? But you never know. So what does everybody else happen to think? Don't look it up. Don't Google it. Just take a bit of a stab as to what you think it went for. The Sega World Sonic Sally Acorn plush toy. I mean, the Sega World Sonic Sally doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, but there you go. It is all very exciting stuff. All right, so we're going to play on regardless. It's a 1997. How much do you reckon this went for? A plush toy, 16-inch. Who gives a rat's bum about it? Well, obviously somebody did, because it went for a whopping $860. What's the deal with that, Mr. Aaron?
It isn't even a nice plush toy, I don't think. But there you go. It is because it's related to, of course, Sonic the Hedgehog, I would presume, Sonic Sally, and a Sega thing. So it's probably a rarer character that doesn't really get too many releases. And, of course, all the video gaming stuff is going through the roof at the moment. Now, I would see this in Op Shop, and I wouldn't give you $2 for it. But there you go. You don't know everything, do you?
Yeah, well, Jonathan, who just joined us, has got it, but he's got to cough up an extra $600, so he's way behind the 8 ball. Yeah, no way. Yeah, absolutely, in desperation. And 16 bids, so there's clearly a fair bit of interest in this, but I have to agree, it's just hard to visualize why this would be worth $860. Unbelievable. Anyway, has that set the tone for the rest of the evening? Oh, check it out.
So here's something, I guess, which is a lot more people would know growing up with the Jetsons, the futuristic family who had Rosie the Robot and George Jetson and all that side of things. This is actually a Super 8 reel. So for those of you who were around pre-VHS, this was the only thing you could really have as a home media. And it was, you would buy these reels and they went for about 3 minutes each. They cost an absolute fortune at the time. I remember I think they were about $40 from Kmart because we had a Flintstones one, which was a lot of bickies in the early 80s when we would have had it. How much do you think one of these would actually go for now?
Yeah, so it's open but never used. So beware of that. 1965. You'd hope that the quality is still there. Black and white and silent. But tell you what, that's really, really left field stuff. Because you do forget that back in 1965 there was no video or DVD. So this is about the best thing you could come with if you wanted to actually see some of the footage. Andrew said 500, and Gavin is at 21. 2187. Yeah, I get the Star Wars reference here. Very good. Christie's at 260. Thomas is at 375, William is at 600, and Jonathan is at 140. You would think there's a bit of money involved with this, but by the same token, not everybody cares about 8mm film, and of course the episodes are all available on DVD or video or whatever. So, but it's rather unique. The Violating the Jetsons, as one often should, is the Vial at $900. What does everybody else think? 1965. Freaking out, it's a long time ago. Las Venus, black and white, silent 8mm home movie film in a box. I know Rusky Babes, who is watching at the moment and has not put a bid in, I don't think, is a big fan of Super 8 film and all the rest of it back in the day when it was the go. But what do you reckon, kids? And once again, there were 8 bids for this as well, so there's clearly a little bit of interest. All right, so what do you reckon it went for? 1965, Jetsons, Hanna-Barbera, Las Venus, black and white, home like the film in the box, either went for a lot or absolute chicken feed. It went for a whopping $14.50. Oh, how does that cut you up?
Well, it's one of those things. I guess not many people have the old Bell and Howell projectors and can watch this stuff anymore. It is one of those things where you ask me if this was worth more or the Sonic Sally plush was worth more. I would go for this every single day of the week, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. Well, Gavin's got it for, he was just putting in a bit of a joke bid there, but he saves himself about $10 or whatever. So there you go. Now, I'm going to put this one up. This is April contacting us all the way from Scotland. She's used a swear word in my name, but I'll allow it just for tonight. But it's good old April. Good to see April calling us all the way from Scotland. My God, the other side of the planet. How international are we? So, yes, very, very cool. And I do agree with you, Jonathan. It is actually nice box artwork as well. But, yeah, after, 50-something years, it's only worth $14.50, and it's never been used. Oh, my God, doesn't that just cut you up? Versus a plush toy that went for hundreds of dollars. Go figure, kids. What's the deal?
Now, this is a bit of a newer version. This is, a newer franchise. It's Adventure Time, and anyone who's got kids, I guess, or is young at heart, could have watched Adventure Time over the last 10 years. They aren't making it anymore, but it was one of the more successful modern TV shows. And so this is a set of an Australian release Happy Meals from McDonald's. Now, we've seen in the past, Happy Meals can go for an absolute fortune or absolute nothing at all. So this is the set of Australian McDonald's Happy Meal Adventure Time figures. I had some of these for Kale when he was growing up.
So you would have thought that when you buy these items, you do get some fries with these, by the way. So how good is that? All right. So Gavin has said 66. I know where he's going with that one. Andrew said 2,000. Christy, yeah, okay. I'll take that as the fact that you got no idea, but fair enough. William has said 55. Jonathan has said 190. These are McDonald's Adventure Time toys. It's all it is. Thomas has said 345. You do wonder. I guess the funny thing about a lot of these toys that you get from McDonald's is once the promotion is finished, they just disappear. You can't get them again. It's not like they keep releasing them again and again and again as the years roll on. So some of these would be quite rare, even though 2016 wasn't that long ago. Excuse me. Bulk lot, 17 pieces. I mean, when I look at that, thinking, well, if I can imagine the price of a single hamburger, it really wouldn't be a lot. But maybe we're wrong. Violating the Adventure Time toys is the Vial at $15. April, all the way from Scotland, has put in $10, which is particularly groovy. So what do you reckon it is, kids? What do you reckon it'd be worth? 2016 Adventure Time, 17 pieces. Surely it can't be worth anything at all. 9 bids. It's very, very exciting. What do people think about it? How much do you reckon it went for? It went for a whopping 16,000. What's the deal with that?
I do not know, but I tell you what, it wasn't just one idiot. There was a whole lot of people bidding on that. And I figure what must have happened is there's a bit of a cult with Adventure Time in that it's a very popular show and they haven't released a lot of merchandise. So I'm probably 100% sure if these were genuine bids, because sometimes they're not, but that would be dumb. These went to America and there would be some big Adventure Time fan that had every single item they'd ever released for Adventure Time, but they hadn't got the Australian Happy Meals and just had to have them. Now, I'll tell you something. Down the bottom there, second from the right, is a BMO. I think we had that in the shop for, I think it was $6.
Yeah, I don't get it. That's beyond the pale of ridiculous. And the worst part is, well, not the worst part, but the worst part is Andrew got it. He's still got to cough up an extra 14 grand.
Can you believe, though, that that's more than most vintage Star Wars items go for?
Yeah, you do have to wonder what the deal is. I mean, that just doesn't seem right. But yeah, you will. So you do the maths. That's 17 divided by 6, like $1,000 a pop, almost. And it's like that is. Yeah, I agree. They're totally befuddled. Yes, I don't think even if there were 1,000 people watching this show, nobody would have put that much on it. So. I mean, whoever sold them, if assuming this is all legitimate, would be sitting there thinking, "Oh my God, how good's that? Bloody hell!" So. Yeah, I agree with it. They are sicker than the vile. Totally agree with you on that one. So, how nuts is that? So, you can't guess these things sometimes. All right.
So that means after we've just had an incredibly expensive one, I always follow them up with a sort of a cheap as crap one. And this is Inspector Gadget. Now, not only is it Inspector Gadget's police car, but it's also the Dr. Claw's car as well. And they come with their original boxes. Inspector Gadget was a TV show. And it was quite popular. It was one of the last things Don Adams did as a voice, was Inspector Gadget. So it's got a lot of fans, but it has also been one of those things that has faded into obscurity a bit now as well.
Yeah, and it's very funny. You actually had an Inspector Gadget in your store, even though the box was a bit ratty. It was complete because this is the actual character, and considering there's a lot of like thin parts, a lot of them tend to break. And we actually found the catalog from the mid '80s where they came out in the Waltons, remember that?
Yes,
and Walton. It was like only $12 something back then, and of course in your store it was a few $100 because it was so rare to find now. So it's amazing. So sort of seeing this is actually particularly groovy.
While you're doing the prices, I'm actually going to whip out and get a glass of water because my throat's going on me. So sorry about that. I'll be 20 seconds.
Oh, that means I've got to hold the show by myself. All right, there you go. Everybody talk about him while he's gone. All right, so there you go. How good is that? Maybe I'll just get rid of him altogether. So there we go. So it's just me now. When he comes back, he's going to go, where the hell am I? I'm not here anymore. And in fact, I'll even give myself the full screen. How good is this guy? Hey, kids, how's it going? Rip it off the card. It's Dags on his own. Keep putting the bids in. I'll get back to them very, very soon. I was in the area. I've given, what's his name? I forgot his name already. Aaron, the how's your father? It's just me. Yay, team. All right, where were we with all that? All right, I'll put him back. I'm completely lost. All right, Andrew said 15 grand. Thomas has said 12. Jesus Christ, 12,000. Jonathan's at 1,100. All these big numbers all of a sudden. Williams at 2,000. Chrissy's at 75.80. That's not a bad price. Williams at 37. Inspector me. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, the Dag show. See, I kick you off and everybody suddenly is enjoying, having a good time. What a great guy, indeedy doody dotty. Aaron's in purgatory. I'm completely lost where we were. So, all right, we've got this item here. Vintage Inspector Gadget police car, Dr. Claw's mysterious used. It does look in pretty good nick though. So yeah, yes, very, very cool. And I like it. It is fun with me. Yes, indeedy doody dotty. How much do you reckon it went for? 30 bids. Oh my goodness gracious me. It went for a whopping 1983, $1,915.
Go gadgets.
So anything you want to say about this? That's pretty good, actually. I think that's actually a good one.
These are really rare items to find. And the thing with these gadget toys is, like Inspector Gadget, they changed and lots of bits came out of them, which means they were really easy to break and easy to lose everything with. So they don't turn up in such nice condition. We have, I think, the Gadget police car in the shop, though, for a lot less than, half of that. So maybe that did go for a bit. Whoever sold that, the seller's got to be pretty happy.
Yeah, and not only he's happy, Williams happy he got it, but you also get change. Was it $85 back there, Mr. Williams? So well done. Yeah, I think that's a good one. So well done to them. And there was 30 bids, so there's clearly a fair bit of interest in it as well. Very groovy.
Yeah.
All right, our last item.
So this is another Hanna-Barbera. This is a Flintstones King Rock Treasure Island Nintendo Game Boy. So the really early generation, this is the first generation of the handheld Nintendo Game Boys, and this was a Flintstones game for that. Hasn't got the box. We've seen that, in a lot of the Nintendo stuff, you need the box for it to go for big bickies. So is this going to be up there with Adventure Time, or is this going to be just pocket money?
Yeah, I always like the thing like new. It's kind of new, but not new, which means it's used. But love it. All right, very good. Ange has gone for $4,000. That's probably a fair whack considering it's a Nintendo Game Boy cartridge. But you never know. Crazier things have happened. Gavin's at $4.21. Jonathan is at $85. Greg, gone for the $2 bin at $2. It's absolutely fantastic. Christy's gone for $12.34. What does everybody else think? April has gone for $100. Thomas, $2,400. Holy guacamole. Kelvin's at $150. Carol finally joining the show all the way from Ballarat. So obviously MasterChef is finished, and what else do they do these days? Something or other's got talent and whatever. Decided to join us. Williams at $55. Violating the Flintstones, as the Vile often does, is the Vile at $300. Very good and exciting stuff. King Rock Treasure Island Nintendo Game Boy cartridge. Surely. Oh, Natasha and the little dude. How about that? Is joining us at 150 as well. But watching Big Brother. Oh my goodness, how embarrassing is that? All right, so this is our last item. So everybody who's joined us right at the very end of this segment, it's a bit unfortunate. But anyway, the Flintstones King Rock Treasure Island Nintendo Game Boy cartridge. Surely it must be worth nothing. 5 bids only. How much you reckon went for? We went for a whopping $102. What's the deal with that, Mr. Aaron?
Well, April's almost spot on that one, isn't she? But is one of those I was a bit surprised with. A lot of these Nintendo ones that don't have their boxes only go for a couple of dollars. So this one must be a particularly hard one to get. That says I've had a lot of these games, and I don't remember ever having the Flintstone one come through. So it could be one of the harder titles to find.
Well, April did get it, and it's off all the way to Scotland, where she currently is at the moment. And it's good to see April joining us, which is very, very groovy. So how good is that? Oh, my goodness gracious me. So crazy stuff. And Carol says, yes, so hello, everyone. Yes, good to see you, Carol, all the way from Ballarat. I mean, Ballarat's a long way from where we are, but Scotland is a shitload further. So, but we welcome everybody on this show. So very good stuff indeed. Guess what, kids? It's now 9 o'clock. And it is time to get into our feature presentation, which I'm sure will excite a whole lot of people. People have actually requested this, which is particularly groovy. So what are we talking about? April wants a collectible haggis. I love it. What are we gasbagging about tonight, Mr. Aaron?
We're continuing our Gerry Anderson discussion. Now, usually when we do discussions over multiple weeks, we break it up. But after the last one, I actually had a few customers come into the shop with feedback saying, can't wait to the next one. We're getting into the more interesting stuff, all the stuff I remember growing up with. So rather than holding it back, we're going with another episode of Gerry Anderson. And this time we're looking at Fireball XL5 and Stingray. So when we started down this path with Russell discussing, we look at Supercar, who knew it would lead to a week-by-week expose on every single Gerry Anderson show that's going to bore all your pants off? Well, not.
The good thing is that, yes, we do actually take requests. I mean, and because of the previous episode, which was 2 weeks ago of Gerry Anderson, was so successful, and we thought, well, it makes sense to just keep going on with the flow because there is actually a lot of Gerry Anderson to cover off. As you said, we've only just barely into the 60s, and there's a lot more to come from after this. But it's a good way to kick things off. And as it turns out, we've got the 2 main shows that were very successful for their time. And, of course, the first one was a bit of the old Fireball XL5 where, I don't know about you, but I want to be a spaceman, or I wish I was.
Yeah, so Fireball XL5, I guess you can see with the way Gerry Anderson did show after show and built upon the success of the previous ones, how, I guess, well thought out and how Like they went through steps with what they did to become more and more successful with every show they did through the 60s. Fireball XL5, of course, is probably just a more refined version of Supercar, which we looked at in our first episode. This was from 1962. This is also the last Gerry Anderson show that was filmed in black and white. Do you remember Fireball XL5?
No, not particularly, because by the time all this was on, I was doing other things. But I remember all through from the guys, all my friends like Jeffro and Rusky Babes and all that, they all referred to the Gerry Anderson stuff. So I know it all through that. So, but yeah, you are right. It was the last stuff that they were doing for in black and white, and of course they were trying to break into the American market as well. And the funny thing is, as they keep producing all these shows, the quality of the shows increases, as what does the quality of the Super Marination. But of course, as they said, they've done stuff on land. Next thing to do is just shove a ship in space, and off to space we went, and yay team.
Yeah, so this is the cast of Fireball XL5, and I think I mentioned last time that the names Gerry Anderson came up with the characters in his show were generally really good, up there with Marvel naming of memorable characters. And of course, the lead character in this was Steve Zodiac. Probably this was filmed before the Zodiac murders, so that was fortuitous, wasn't it? And then you've got Dr. Venus, and then we've got the other supporting cast. My favourite one, though, was Robert the Robot, not Robbie the Robot. And for anyone who is a Doctor Who fan, he used the same voice as the 60s Cybermen with the voice ring modulator and the palate cleft thing. So that was always pretty cool. I didn't see Fireball XL5 when I was growing up, and I didn't even see it on video because it didn't really get a release till way later. I collected some of it, though, just on the strength of it being Gerry Anderson stuff. And because I liked Thunderbirds, you'd see other stuff that was by Gerry Anderson, you'd collect it. So I did have some Fireball XL5 annuals and things when I was growing up, and you did see some of that stuff in Australia, even though I never saw it on television myself.
Gavin's been mentioned about the puppets we use for other shows. I don't think they are. I think they're all freshly designed every time because they're like improving all the electronics and the skill sets and how they could actually make them work better from previous iterations. So you could almost, if you line them all up in a row from, was it Twizzle to this point here, you would actually see the evolution of the technology. So it wouldn't make sense to just keep using puppets, which is, you know what, we've maxed this out as far as we can go. We need to sort of up the quality, design them all from scratch, and then they can do extra things, and that's the key thing as well. So yeah,
what you do, the only thing you do find is some of the lead character puppets might be reused as background ones in later series, but not the same sort of character.
By the same token, some of the characters might seem very similar. So the Steve Zodiac in this may sort of seem like another character in another show. You go, they may have a sort of look and feel, similar look and feel in that regard. But other than that, I think you'll find that they're all brand new designs and brand new creations. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is the first show. I think you'd remember from the other shows, some of the artwork that was around was in colour, but most of the publicity stuff was in black and white. This is the first show where you actually start getting colour photography being used as the. That's kind of what we just said. They did use some as secondary characters, as some of the promo stuff. And because they used colour photography, people, I guess, for the first time really knew the colours of the spaceships and everything like that. So on some of the older shows that we've done with Gerry Anderson, the black and white stuff, you had all different colour toys because they didn't actually know the colour of the props on set. But from now on, they kind of get a lot more accurate just because there's more colour photography around.
Indeed. So it's interesting, just a bit of an aside. So Rusky Babes is saying, I remember, although I'm not a spaceman. So what he's referring to there is the banquet in 1980 for The Empire Strikes Back. A whole group of people got together. They actually sang a live song. Captain Scarlet's Lonely Hearts Club Band was the name of the group. And they actually sang the Fireball XL5 theme song, I Wish I Was a Spaceman, live. And actually it was Lucy and just gone blank who the other lady was, and Jeffro did a solo part as well, which is particularly
I was going to say probably Jeffro in there at some point.
Yeah. And it was very funny when they did a sound test out in the bathrooms. They said, "Oh, we found sound absolutely fantastic," but when they had to do it live on stage, and Rusky Babes did the section for the hearing impaired, where he was like pointing at models and all the rest. It was actually really, really cool. So anyway, I thought I'd just put that in case people wondering what the hell we were talking about. So yeah,
no problem. So always interesting to get some of these little local facts in as well. I only get those facts on our show with Dags.
Yeah, exactly right. But Rusky Babes, you got to put in, make sure you rip it off the card. Fun factoid. Don't forget to put that heading in. Otherwise, I'll just think it's another comment. But yes, very, very cool. Bad guys.
Yeah, so this is the first show, and you'll see this from now on, I guess, where there was a bigger diversity of bad guys. The interesting thing is because I guess they're on a limited budget with the puppets, you never really got more than 2 bad guys in one show. So it kind of reminds me of, I guess, the Time Tunnel, where they might show some stock footage of an entire Napoleonic army, but only 3 people run on screen. And this happens through Fireball XL5 and a few of the others. Sometimes you might get 1 leader and 2 subordinates, but most of the time you'll only get 2 bad guy puppets because that's all the budget for an episode could afford.
2 things. Sorry, yeah, thank you for putting all the names in. So it was Catherine. I just had a mental blank. I couldn't remember her name. Yeah, Peter Lindemann, Andrew Pam, as well as Jeffro, Lucy, and Rusky Babes. Captain Scarlet's Lonely Hearts Club Band. 1 night only, 1 event only, 1 song only. But geez, it was absolutely fantastic. I love the eyeball down here. That's straight out of It Came From Outer Space sort of eyeball, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? Yeah, there's some great character designs. And the thing is, when you're working with puppets rather than like making someone up, you can get away with a lot more exotic designs, I think.
Yeah. And of course, the key thing is being a sci-fi show, you're out in space, you're going to come across bad dudes all the time. Now, of course, the idea being that, our heroes have got to protect the Earth from all these nefarious baddies who keep coming down to want to destroy things. It seems to be the common theme in these things. And I guess it's like the similar sort of storyline. It was a children's show after all. And so not exactly designed for people to be going, oh, that's scientifically accurate. Now that's all chucked out the window. But it was entertaining. It was good for kids. And that was the key thing.
There's a surprising amount of plot lines where aliens try to send a super missile to Earth to blow us all up, and Fireball XL5 has to stop it, blow it up, disable it, or something like that. So, but it's a good show for the time.
Yep, totally agree.
Now, we're starting off by looking at some of my favorite collectibles, which is the vintage comic books from the era. And what we've got here again is, because the show was aimed at an American market, you've got one issue of Gold Key Comics launched in America, and you can see it's a totally different version of the images in the show. I don't know if that's quite an Americanized version, but it's just a different version for the comics there to what they went with in the British version. And the British version is a much more painterly style of artwork. It was in TV 21 comic, which was like a newsprint size comic and treated the stories like they were real. So you got these headlines on the front covers, Fireball, Mystery Flight, battle stations, and things like that. And then the inside comic, Fireball was one of the popular ones. So about, maybe a quarter of the comic was color, and Fireball was one of the color comics in it. So it was very popular at the time. And I guess as a kid, if you saw this stuff in black and white, and then you went to the newsagents and you got these Technicolor newspapers blasting these headlines, they would have been quite impressive comics, and they are very collectible to this day.
I love the picture up here, of Steve and Venus, and you go, oh, that looks grouse. If you saw this before seeing the show, you could almost like watch the show and go, what? It's got freaking puppets. What's the deal with that?
I do think that's really funny. In the TV 21 comics, they do sort of capture the look of the actual show, but in the American comics, they go for full-on square-jawed American spacemen, beat them up. There's no way that the puppet show or the Super Marionation show could be like that.
Yeah, I love it. I like that from Gavin. Were there any good aliens? And shows like this, there's no room for good aliens. That's what the humans are for. So all aliens are bad aliens, and dead aliens are even happier than that. But yeah, anyway, not to worry.
Now you can see here is the annuals, and annuals are one of those staples of British publishing, but they were aimed internationally. So you can see that, again, they're not very similar to the actual show you'd be watching. That last one there, you kind of see with the faces floating, look like the ones that represent things from the TV show. But the other ones, if you saw those annuals and saw the show, you're absolutely right. You would have no idea that it was going to be a very jerky sort of marionette with, flying around in spaceships. And Fireball, we see this from now on, getting into the Gerry Anderson stuff. It is a lot more popular, and because it becomes more popular, it also becomes more merchandised. So obviously they were onto a good thing. And if you think about it, it was a good thing, because if you had to produce this show with live action, you'd be making it with a movie budget to make it look as good as it does. But if you can make it with puppets and it's just as popular, you're probably spending 1/10 of what you would doing it with live actors. The other thing is, some of the people who cut their teeth on Gerry Anderson productions went on to do the special effects for James Bond and other big budget movies. So it was a really high quality level of program that he was delivering.
We've sort of discussed this in the past episode, but I can't imagine what it'd be like working on these sort of shows where every day is something different, something unique, and something like really spectacular. And it's sure, even though you see it as a black and white show, but on the set it'll be in color. And it's like, imagine either you're operating the marionettes or you're doing the sound work or you're building the sets. It would just be a lot of fun, wouldn't it? It'd just be shits and giggles the whole way. I can't imagine there'd be like stress popping out of your head. From a director's point of view, it'd be easy. Just get the
Yes.
puppet to go there, the puppet to go there. There's no acting involved. It's all done with the voice. So you just can't imagine how much of an enjoyment it would be. And I can imagine, as you said, these people got into this business and they go, oh, it's the ultimate dream job. So, no, absolutely love it.
I think Gavin there has asked about Jim Henson. I don't actually know if Jim Henson ever worked on any Gerry Anderson stuff. I don't think he did. But if you look at giants in the industry, you've probably got Jim Henson, Frank Oz, and Gerry Anderson would be the known names in puppetry. Can you think of anyone sort of bigger than that? That would be it, wouldn't it?
Off the top of my head, yeah, I'm not entirely sure. Jim Henson was obviously based in the US, and these guys are in England, and they probably had their own sort of like agenda. And I mean, Jim Henson would have been quite young at that point too. So, yeah, I wouldn't have thought
the
so.
other thing is Jim Henson basically invented himself a whole new way of doing Muppets rather than puppets, and you don't see much string work with Jim Henson. So they're sort of in the same industry, but totally different techniques.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, the YouTube thing is not going to work clearly, but Rusky Babs has said that fan films are still being produced to this day for Fireball XL5. So that's very, very groovy. I mean, if you do a CG animated version of the puppets, you could probably just do about anything and then recreate the shows exactly right. So, yeah, very cool stuff. But as you were saying, so you produce a product, it's in space, it's got to have aliens, it's going to be very, very cool. Of course, it's cashing in on the whole space race of the 60s, because by that point, everybody's like looking at going into space with Sputnik and later in the decade, the moon mission. So clearly the space was the go. And if you can capture the market for kids and all the rest of it, it's absolutely fantastic. And of course, you do that with a couple of games.
Yeah, so we see with Fireball, out of all the Gerry Anderson stuff we've seen so far, they produced the widest version of stuff. And what I do actually love, it was probably in that time before, you know, guns and stuff were banned for kids. So you get some really interesting imagery of people shooting stuff up and things like that. Now you can see there on their space scooters down the bottom there. And by this time they had realized it was very hard to get puppets or marionettes to run and look realistic running around. So you'll see from the shows, they're all usually designed around fantastic vehicles and innovations that they can ride vehicles and things like that, which is really an ingenious way of sort of making this shows seem that much more realistic to kids, because you don't break that sort of you don't break the belief by having a jittery puppet trying to sprint down a room or something like that. So you can see these are two of the games. I love the artwork from this period, back in the days where it was actually artwork and not CG manipulations and cut and paste and Photoshop and stuff like that. And you can see the games here. I did look at the Fireball game, and it only has about 13 steps. So I don't know how you play it, but it wouldn't be a very long game to get from one side of the board from start to finish, which I thought was quite funny. And then we've got like a snap game, and that's interesting as well, because you've got that sort of really old-fashioned artwork, which has a charm that we've kind of lost today. If you produced a snap game like that today, my son would be, why do they look crap? Why don't they look like Pokemon and stuff like that? But that artwork speaks to me from a previous generation where things were a bit different, and I really love it.
You're talking about the game having not a lot of steps. That's probably intentional, because one of the worst things you can get with a board game, and Ange watching this knows all about this, is having to read the instructions. Right? Sometimes you go, I don't want to read the instructions. I've got the pretty pictures. I've got the things. Can't we just go? And of course, you've got no idea what you're doing. You lose interest. So for a kid from a really young child, they just go, what you do is get from there to there, roll the dice, and off you go, son. And maybe that was the rationale behind it, because the more complicated it is, the quicker people lose interest. So you are right. It's from as you get older, like 1 year older, then as a little kid, you go, yeah, now I'm losing interest. But as a really little kid, I'm just flying in a spaceship. How good's that? So.
Well, they did it in a few shows, and Gerry Anderson was quite smart, where they tried to have enough action in it that kids who really didn't follow the story would still enjoy the show. But then the stories were complex enough that kids who watched it with their parents wouldn't get bored either. So it was quite a good way at getting a family audience.
And that's the cool thing, because if you've got your aliens who are attacking the Earth and you've got to have the hero save the day, it's very simple. Okay, the ugly-looking things are the bad guys, the good-looking things are the good guys. What could possibly go wrong? So, and as you made mention, because it was a black and white show, and of course all the merchandising was in color, that you'd be instantly gravitated towards that, thinking, "Oh, looks really, really cool. This looks really spunky." Because on TV it doesn't look like this, as evidenced by these items.
Exactly. And I don't know if you do this. I do this sometimes because a lot of the photos from the period are actually in black and white. But I always imagine sort of 60s toy shops as a lot more dour and boring than they actually would have been, because you see stuff like this and you see black and white photos. And when you realize that there was this much intense color and, out there animation and colors like this, going into a shop back then would have been a real assault on the senses kind of thing. So we're looking at some of the tin plate stuff here, and you've got vintage lunch boxes, which are very cool. Sorry, I'm going to be fighting it with my voice tonight. And you've got the Bagatelle games, which are really nice too. All of this stuff is incredibly hard to get. When I was looking at some of the older Gerry Anderson stuff, it was actually available, and that's probably because it's of interest to Gerry Anderson fans, but it's probably not as collectible as the stuff from this era. So these are the things from the era where you start paying many hundreds of pounds to get them, and you don't see them in good condition, and there are many collectors that want them in their collection. And you can see why, because a whole display of this would actually be a very impressive, 60s sci-fi display.
In addition, if you saw these items first off and you go, "I've never even seen the show," you would actually be attracted to watch the show, because the merchandising looks really, really cool. And it's funny how you can reverse engineer the psychological behavior of a person, saying, "Well, show them a product for the show," and people go and watch the show rather than watch the show and then buy the product. So it's very, very clever, and doing it all in color is the way to go. And of course, as a person watching it on black and white TV, you're just imagining how vibrant it would really be. And wishing, one day, if they ever produce a color TV, I've got to get myself one of those, even though the show wasn't broadcast in in color. I like this one from Gavin. I've just lost it. But to aliens, we're ugly. But yeah, that's exactly right. But it's important in a show. You can't have humans fighting humans, because then when you knock them off, you don't want crying kids. That's the last thing you need. So there you go. Very, very cool. Now, of course, when it comes, sorry, go on.
None of the younglings got killed in Fireball XL5.
No, they did not. So there you go. One of the things, and you are right, Thomas, it's the colours that attract the eye. And even though these pictures that we're about to show are a little bit washed out, you can just imagine how vibrant they were. And of course, it's the old classic jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah, and again, it is one of those things where it was very hard to find nice examples of the jigsaw puzzle. And when you think about it, it was popular enough. They must have sold tens of thousands of these. And when you go online and Google these, because I have to do research for every episode, and you can only find one image of each thing, it really shows that not a lot of them survived out of the 60s. And I think it's one of those things where jigsaws are bought for kids, and they're very disposable in that, unless it's a family-sized jigsaw, so not a smaller one of 100 pieces, as soon as the kids outgrow them, they get shopped or hand-me-down. And as soon as a piece is missing, they're just treated as throw them in the garbage, which is a shame, because some of the artwork on jigsaws from this period is absolutely amazing pieces of pop art. Really fantastic that they've not just copied like pictures and stills, they've actually put the characters in different environments that probably weren't even in the show. So it's really interesting seeing all this stuff, and it's very, very hard items to find these days.
Yeah, I like this. The ships look like they're from the Thunderbirds. You reckon? Wonder why that is. So yeah, so very, very cool. Now we talked about earlier about you got the show, you got the characters and the puppets, all the rest of it, and of course it goes with the music, and the music had the song, and of course that then produces a little bit of memorabilia for the music.
Now, again, Fireball XL5 had a really popular theme that did well at the time, and it was marketed, and then they did the TV 21 albums. Now, Gerry Anderson really started to get into, I guess, what you call now the expanded universe, but he really took TV, all his Super Marionation stuff, and put it under the banner of TV 21, and then started putting these together, making, even though they weren't the same program and they didn't share characters, making a sort of brand and franchise that if you were into this thing, you could collect them all and you would like them because they were familiar. Now, the records and the music for Fireball XL5 and particularly Stingray were really, really good, to the point where you can hear cues and music from this going all the way through to Space 1999, because, you know, once they have the score written for something exciting, it became sort of stock music for the company. So a lot of these are really desirable, and you can see down the bottom, even though it's a relatively obscure show, they're still releasing it on vinyl, and they're still coloured vinyl, and they still release the singles for some of them on World Record Day and stuff like that. So we see as we go forward, a lot of these shows do have music releases, and I do think that it would have been Gerry Anderson who is promoting the show on all fronts. And what better way to promote your show than to release a theme that then becomes popular and gets played on radio for free?
Totally agree with you. Keeping with the merchandising theme, and of course we talk about the marionettes that were available for Twizzle and some of the other shows, you've also got them for here as well.
I know, and it is interesting. These are the Pelham puppets again, which was the company that did a lot of the Gerry Anderson puppets, particularly the earlier ones. You say with the innovation of the show that the puppets got better and better looking. Pelham puppets didn't. They kind of were the same puppets, and they just had different costumes and a different head, but there was nothing really much more innovative about any of them as they went through. And you can see with puppets, they've got a kind of half charm, half you don't want them in your room because they're scary and like creepy, but they are one of those things that is very collectible to Gerry Anderson fans, and they are quite hard to find. You can imagine that these would have been destroyed quite easily.
It was a very good fun factoid there, Rusky Babes. I don't know, you really pulled out a ripper there. So that was particularly groovy. So, and as
absolutely true. Yeah.
As you mentioned, like, I mean, they didn't like the idea that the puppets could walk around because they look completely trite. Put them on these rockets all the time, or the jet mobiles. And of course, you're thinking as a kid, well, we're going to get me one of them. And it's like, sure enough, you could.
Well, this is the point where I think because of the time that it was produced in the middle of the space race, when everyone was looking to the moon and trying to get satellites up, this really captured the imagination of the kids. And so they released the Jetmobile, and they released a couple of different versions of it. And it is one of those things that is very hard to get in good condition, and a lot of people do really want them because these are some of the earlier British TV space toys. So it is quite hard to get these in good condition. They go for quite a lot of money, usually thousands of pounds rather than hundreds of dollars.
Two things. I love the fact that Rusky Babes is chucking on these fun factoids. I hope he's not just making this stuff up, because I'm just believing everything he's showing me at the moment. So that's actually quite...
Russell is on point, and because it's another Gerry Anderson thing, I can imagine his keyboard is smoking again as he gets all of these.
Oh, okay, yeah, he can't type them out quick enough. So Carol's made a mention about the creepy, and it was about the Pelham puppets. Yeah, okay. Yes. And as Aaron said, from a production point of view, you got a head, stick it on 10,000 different bodies. Who's going to know? Kids just going to play with it. They're going to have a whale of a time. So it's all true. Of course, you're going to say that. You're not going to say, "Oh no, I'm just inventing some of this while I'm going along." But I tell you what. So as we discussed with the show, like we did with Supercar and all the rest of it, one of the key things that you have is, like, it's great. You've got all the characters, you've got the environments, and you've got the world building, all that. But it's the hardware that does the trick. It's the one thing that everybody goes, "Oh, I've got to get me one of them." Now, whether it's the Supercar, whether it's your Thunderbirds, which came later, whether it's Stingray, which came later as well, or it's the Fireball XL5 itself, you got to get yourself the damn ship, and there's lots of them. Is that right?
Oh my goodness! Wouldn't it be hard finding a complete version of this with all the different parts and figures and things that go with it? Now, I did a quick check on eBay, and there wasn't even one for sale, so that gives you an idea of how hard these probably are to get. This would have been a premium toy when it originally came out. Not only you get Fireball XL5, but you get some of the buildings that go with it. You've got the backup crew, you've got the landing pad, and you've got all these other wacky and wild stuff that attached to it so you can do different things. So they really marketed this, and it would have been a fantastic toy. And I would have thought, back when we were growing up, you got one thing for your birthday and one thing for Christmas. This would have been the one thing you really wanted.
I'm curious to see, like, Rusky Babes is obviously very, very dialed into this, the Gerry Anderson stuff, Fireball XL5. I wonder if there are items they're going to be showing here that he hasn't seen before. So if that's the case, Rusky Babes, can you sort of just mention it and go, "Oh yeah, that's really left field, something that hasn't come up." And there's quite a few when it comes to the XL5 ships, so there might be something you've like, "Oh, completely new.
Well, a lot of these are quite well documented. When we get into the Stingray stuff, there are a couple of things I'm going to point out and go, well, you never would have thought they made that. But this is another one of the spaceships, and this is like a Zoom one which can fire up and then comes down on a parachute. And again, when you get toys like that, it's very hard to find unused versions or if they're in good condition. So all of this stuff, because it's early spaceship, early astronaut stuff, as well as being a TV show, it just means there's a lot of people collecting it. And you've got to admit, it's a really nice looking spaceship. So even if you weren't, just collecting Fireball XL5, but you collected spaceships, that's definitely one you'd go, that's a great example of a 60s toy that I'd like to put in my collection.
Yeah, I love the timing. Gaffin actually asked, did they ever make a rocket that could launch like a rocket? And sure enough, bang, there it is. So, and that would be very, very groovy. And I like it as seen on TV. For that reason alone, you got to get one.
And here you've got a few different versions, including ones that come right up to date with the, not the character options, the product enterprise one. But you can see that it has been a very popular toy. There's been model kits of it. I don't know if Russell, the model making extraordinaire, has made a Fireball XL5 himself, but there was some examples that I found online. And then, of course, you've got a green one in the middle there, which is just an unusual one. But I found they did an example in alternate colours for collectors. So you can see right from the 60s right up until, I guess, a decade ago, where they were still producing toys from this show and they still sell out. And even the one you can see on the far right, which is the last example, which was from Product Enterprises about 15 years ago, even now on the secondary market, it goes for about $500. When it came out, it was about $60. So there is a collector market for this stuff that is still driving the price up on all of the items from this show.
What's interesting is that if you wanted to, because if I'm not mistaken, in the Fireball fleet, there's 30 ships, and obviously number 5 is the 5, right? You do wonder if you could actually sit there and go, I'll just renumber the rest of them and end up with 30. So Fireball 1 right through to Fireball 30. That'll be something a little bit left field, hey? So I don't know if they show any of the other Fireballs in the series, and if they do, if they're exactly the same as this. So
they do. I remember one episode where they have to go and rescue another Fireball. So they definitely do that.
And I think it's Fireball 30 where they did that. Yeah. So, but yes, there are extra other ones if you wanted to go to, another 29 that need to be sort of numbered off. But that's particularly groovy. And the cool thing about good old XL5 is you can still get it on your videos and your DVDs. What do you reckon?
Yeah, well, you can see on the left there, you've got the Super 8 films, which we showed just before go for bugger all on eBay. But I'm pretty sure those ones would go for more than the Jetsons ones. But again, it was popular enough that they released a Super 8 version for kids to be able to play 3 minutes of it at home, which is just amazing to think. A lot of the time, Fireball XL5 was paired up with Stingray because they came out sort of pretty close together. So you can see that the second Super 8 there is half Fireball and half Stingray. Then we've got the VHS releases. Now, again, these weren't released in Australia, but I remember seeing them in Minotaur, and they were those $80 a hit import ones that you kind of had to grit your teeth and take it if you wanted to actually watch an episode of the show. So they did release them on VHS, and then, of course, they have been released on DVD and Blu-ray. I don't have them. I watched some on YouTube in the lead up to preparing for this, and they were still quite charming and probably still quite watchable, but I haven't really got a good knowledge of the actual show. Have you watched a lot of it?
No, I haven't actually. World Space Patrol, I agree with you, is like early Starfleet. So, yes, all the humans versus those pesky bad guys. And of course, that became a bit of a running thing for a lot of shows and still is today. But, of course, the key thing is that XL5 was all great. It was all wonderful. It was up in space, J team. But the downside was it was in black and white, right? And the only way to fix that is to do a whole new show, forget space, go in the drink, chuck some colour in for the first time ever. And good old Gerry, you're cooking on gas, son. Could you get yourself a bit of Stingray?
Well, not only was Stingray in colour, but this is a bit of a fact. I don't know if Russell probably would know this. This was the first English show filmed entirely in colour out of, not just a children's show. It was the first show, and this was because they really were trying to market to the Americans.
Well, even though it was filmed in color, they still had to color everything, as in like when they painted the models and the backdrops, a certain color. So in black and white, because in England they were still showing it in black and white, they couldn't just have it all, the models just vanish with the background. So they were very mindful of the colors that they picked for everything. But yes, it finally arrived in color. And how groovy is this?
It is very interesting that, you know, Doctor Who, which is one of the other big hitters, didn't get filmed in colour to 1970. And even then, most people didn't have colour sets. So this is very early to be in colour in the UK. Now you can see here is the main cast. And you've got, again, a great name, Troy Tempest as the main character there. And down the bottom, what Gavin was saying before about did they reuse the characters? They didn't, but I've got to tell you, the surface agent looks a lot like Parker to me.
Yeah, it does. And for those of you who weren't aware, like Marina here, and the reason why she's mute is because Sylvia Anderson just didn't want to do any voices. She wanted to spend her time, because she used to voice all the female characters. It's like, want to spend more time writing the episodes rather than having to do any vocal work. So they said, nah, make it mute so she doesn't say a word. And you're off and running. So that was the idea behind that.
Yeah, there is. And the other notable thing for this is the other female character was voiced by Louise Maxwell, who was...
It's Lois.
Lois, that's right. Lois Maxwell, who was, of course...
Moneypenny from the James Bond movies. Yeah, exactly right.
James Bond. And
Very cool.
When you listen to it, it does sound like Moneypenny. So,
well, funny about that, eh? All Chesters goes, yes, Mr. Bond. Yes, very, very groovy. Oh, good stuff. Oh, April, I love that. Every man's dream of Silent Woman. I only put that on screen because you said that, April. I wouldn't have done it for anybody else.
Do you know what's funny? They actually say that in the series.
Yeah, exactly right. Very, very cool. All right, so we've gone underwater, right? And as I've said, the reason with the idea, because also with the space race, there was a lot of interest in ocean exploration at the time with Jacques Cousteau and all the rest of it. And Jeep and Gerry Anderson said, who knows what the hell's down there? There's all this untapped, unmapped ocean floor, completely open to all these new fantastic stories. And so it just seemed to be a logical thing to say, okay, they've done their show into space. Let's go in the water. Bring out a really groovy submarine called Stingray, because Stingray just sounded shit hot. And film it in color, sell it to the American market, and we are cooking on gas. And away we went.
And there you have some of the promo from Stingray. And if you saw a promo like that as a kid, I would think that looks fantastic. And what you were saying about the Stingray looking good, one of the things about the whole Gerry Anderson series, when you look at shows from that period, and particularly B movies, a lot of the designs, especially of UFOs and ships like that, are just clunky and bad. But all the stuff in Gerry Anderson almost looks like that retro futuristic stuff that is so very cool even now, that people love the designs, love the curves on it, and it looks like something that is actually functional and could exist.
So what Gavin will love, you get down to the bottom of the ocean, instead of seeing a shitload of fishes, which are now going to be down there, you've got dudes down there. There's like a whole civilization built at the bottom of the ocean floor. Absolutely fantastic. And are they good guys? Of course not. No. They're all bad bastards. And so there you go. Denizens of the deep, some bad puppies, just to make the show really interesting.
Who would have thought there was enough, I guess, not alien races, but races living under the ocean for two of them to turn up every week to be the bad guys on Stingray? And this is an example of, when you look at it, they really only had the budget for two bad guys each week who would turn up. And like I said, once in a while there would be three. There would be a leader and the two henchmen. But usually that was reusing some of the old bad guy puppets for sort of to get away with it on the budget. But I've got to say, some of them look really fantastic and they're very creative. And it almost is, to me, where Lost in Space was doing these aliens in America, Gerry Anderson was the one doing the equivalent aliens in the UK. And that would have worked if they were trying to sell this show in America, because they do look like something could have walked off an Irwin Allen production.
Yeah, and of course, because they're doing it all underwater too, they've got to, I mean, they obviously didn't film it in water, but they put like a fish tank in front of the models and all the rest of it. It just had a completely new and different vibe about the production design. And of course, even like the puppets themselves, they actually had different facial expressions. They could interchange the heads and make it a lot more dynamic, which gave it a lot more life, and of course a lot more of a bigger fan base too, which is particularly groovy. And of course that ended up where you can see in the TV 21s.
Exactly. And you can see that is actual issue 1 of TV 21 comic, and it was such a popular show that Stingray was the cover on the first issue and the lead comic in the actual paper. So Stingray was a monumental success when it came out. It was definitely Gerry Anderson's biggest show. And you can see Stingray got many covers on TV 21 and was the colour comic for most of the time when it ran. And I don't know if you've seen the Marvel and DC Piecework magazines where you can buy collected volumes week by week of old Marvel comics. They've actually done that with Gerry Anderson, and they've done all the TV 21s and a lot of the old comics. And there is quite a substantial amount of volumes of Stingray and Fireball XL5, and as we go forward and look at other shows as well. But they are very impressive comics. I mean, I don't really collect comics, but I love the look of these ones. And because there was Doctor Who in these ones, I don't mind having these ones in my collection either.
I just realized that the logo, the thing there, is Steve Zodiac dead? The answer would be yes, because our producers have said, no, we're done with Fireball XL5. We're moving on to a brand new show. And yay, teams.
Yeah, but they were pulling the whole Superman is dead years before DC tried it.
Yes, exactly right. So obviously the show's in colour. People are seeing it in colour, even though in England, as we said, black and white was probably still the go for a lot of people. But and of course, with a new show and a new concept comes a whole lot of new merchandise, and the annuals, of course, made an appearance as well.
Now, this is very interesting because this is the first one of these where Stingray has gone through revivals, and this is the first time where I've been looking at modern merchandise as much as it comes up as much as vintage merchandise, where you look at it. So I've tried to split it up so this is all the vintage stuff, but the modern merchandise is in there as well. Now, this you can see is the more American style of the comics. In the TV 21s, you could see it was a much more painterly style, and this is, again, the more American, looks like Marvel DC style. So you can see from this, and this is just a small section of what they made, Stingray was massively popular. There was a lot of comics in the 60s, and it got a revival in the 90s, and there was even more comics in the 90s than there were in the 60s when it originally came out.
Yes, I'm just going through these fun factoids that Rusky Babes is pumping out at the moment. So
Yeah, the fun factoid there is if you had one of the original puppets now, it'd be worth a lot more than £900.
Yes, exactly right. Oh, get a load of that.
So this is some of the 60s stuff again, and you've got some of the very, very hard stuff to find these days, which is like colouring books and sticker books and activity books, because they're the type of things that kids go through and draw and cut out and paste on every single page, and then they get thrown away. And the other thing there, of course, is you've got the Stingray special from TV 21, which comes with the Wasp pin and Stingray pin, which you can imagine every single one of those was ripped open and lost within days of it coming home. So there's some very rare merchandise if you're a Stingray completist.
Yeah, I'm just going on to what Rusky Babe said about the cost of the show. So as I understand it, they had enough sets they could actually do 2 shows at exactly the same time. And I think they filmed the whole thing in 10 months. So they had to do all their character parts, and then, of course, they did do the special effects parts, but they had 2 units running concurrently. So the whole thing was all done and dusted in like less than a year. And that makes a whole lot of sense from that perspective. So, yeah, it would have been expensive because they obviously had the studio space and they had to deal with the whole thing with the fish tank and the fishes and all the rest of it. So, but I guess the return on investment was definitely there, and it was particularly good stuff. So, yeah, good hope.
Well, absolutely, because, again, this is some of the modern stuff. And like I said, in 93, when I think union rules changed so they could show more repeats, Thunderbirds and Stingray went back onto primetime kids television, and it became just as popular that time round as it did when it was originally out. So all of a sudden, after nothing for years and years and years, suddenly there's Stingray books and merchandise and comics and records and toys back in the shops again, which is one of those amazing things that sometimes happen. Now, I've seen it happen with Doctor Who. Every time there's a popular Doctor, there's a resurgence in popularity. But it's very unusual for the original show to come back a generation later and kids pick up on it again, and it becomes so popular because a new generation of kids are falling in love with it.
Totally agree. So Gavin's asked, what's the deal with the fish? There's 2 answers to this question. If you're talking about real fish, they filmed through an actual fish tank, and they put real fish, small fish in the front, and gave a sense of scale and perspective to the Stingray models and stuff that were in the background. And if you're referring to the fish way up there. He belonged to the, I can't remember what it was called, the Bad Dudes fish.
Yeah,
What
the
do you-
amphibian Atlantean Lord Titan
Yeah,
dude,
that stuff.
and they are called Terror Fish, and we will look at some of the toys for them a little bit later.
Good stuff. But yeah, annuals. Oh, there you can see one right there. Yeah, so
Yeah. So they're
going,
the
dude.
annuals, and you can see the first two annuals there are classic 60s TV annuals, and then you can see the ones on the right are 90s annuals. Then that's kind of mind blowing for me. They released two annuals in the 60s. There's a 30-year gap, and then they released two more annuals in the 90s because it gets popular again. So that's quite interesting for a show to have that phenomenon. Like Thunderbirds was kind of popular all the way through, but this show was shown, went away, and then came back.
Absolutely, and of course, like with the merchandise, as we're going to be covering off, one of the key things that they produced was the old Give a Show projector, which was put them in a bit of a fan fave.
Yeah, in the 60s, we got a lot more boxed games than we do these days. And when I mean that, like shows these days might get one game, but anything that was popular in the 60s, there was standard games and toys that got the branding and release. And the Give a Show projector is one of those toys. And I think it's one of my favorite toys from the 60s because it's just so imaginative and adapts to so many different shows. And the artwork is fantastic, and the concept of all the different slides and showing it on your wall to your friends and having original stories and things, I just think is a fantastic item. Now, this is the Stingray Give a Show projector from the 60s. They aren't too hard to get, but they're incredibly hard to get in good condition because they are in those sort of big, sort of almost hollow empty boxes. They're always crushed when they turn up. So this is quite a nice one to have.
Very good. We're talking about the fishes. I believe it was an actual fish. Is that correct?
No, it's a ship.
Oh, it is a ship, is it? Okay, fair enough then. Well,
Yeah.
you learn something new every day.
Yeah.
I needed a fun factoid for that one, Rusky Babes, and you let me down, son. So there you go. Very, very cool. Anyway.
Yeah, and these are some of the other games and jigsaws. There was the board game, which I think every 60s franchise kind of got, and there was a couple of different board games in the 60s. The really interesting one there, and that is my actual copy I've taken a photo of, is the Cutamastic set. Now, this is one of those really bizarre things which I don't know if you'd have ever come across before. What you got was a sheet of polystyrene with different things printed on it, and that sort of hoop that's next to the Cutamastic logo has a hot wire, and you got to cut out the Stingray and cut out the figures and then paint them, and you'd have a 3D diorama. Didn't last too long because while kids were cutting them out, they also were burning their siblings' arms and setting light to stuff in the kitchen when they were doing it. But it is a very hard game to get, and that's a really interesting piece. The jigsaws are fantastic as well, and like the Fireball ones, incredibly hard to find online good examples of all the different pictures. That's why I've got small pictures there, because I haven't got really high-res ones. But there were a selection of jigsaws, and they all have this amazing sort of theme. One of the things about the Fireball XL5 and the Stingray, the merchandise kind of looks like it belongs to the same set. So you start getting merchandise where you can have a set of stuff. And Stingray, of course, because it's underwater, you've got sort of the blue and the green and the aqua merchandise. And with Fireball XL5, you'll see you had a lot of yellow and orange and red, the color of the Fireball. So when collectors can do that and theme stuff, it looks particularly good.
Yeah, the Cutamastic thing, that was something a little bit left field, wasn't it? So, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. So if you like your ships, you go, yeah, you like your fishes, who gives a rat's hearts about them, mate? If you're a young kid, especially if you're a boy, but yeah, for girls as well, what you need are the most important things of all time. You need the effing guns, mate. Give me some weapons.
So one of the things that would come out for a lot of shows in the 60s and 70s was actually the guns. And this is another fantastic piece of merchandise from Stingray. At the top, you can see that's an original Lincoln gun, and it's a die-cast metal one, quite heavy and quite hefty and very hard to find. And because it crosses over into sort of gun collecting, they're quite expensive when they do turn up. In fact, you never really see boxed examples, and it was one of those things where there aren't many examples online, even when you Google it, to find. And then down the bottom, still today, there are kit-bashed resin ones. So you can see that was a modern one down the bottom where you can buy the resin or 3D printed one and then paint it up yourself, and you've got a different Stingray gun.
I could just imagine the pew-pews coming from here. What do you reckon, old son?
Exactly, yes. And again, with this, we had you can see now that TV21 albums are an actual thing, and they had 4-page ads, not just in comics, but in record magazines. So you would get the announcement that all these TV21 records were coming out. And the Century 21 records were interesting because they were 45 size, but they played at 33, which meant they would play for a full, I think, 15 minutes each side. I think the deal actually was 21 minutes of action. So instead of a 3-minute, 4-minute song single, you actually bought a single, but you got like 20 minutes, 21 minutes of action, which was usually a cut down version of an episode, or in some cases it was a totally new production that was recorded just for the records. And what's been really interesting, fans have now taken some of the unproduced TV21 soundtracks, made exact replicas of the puppets and the locations, and they filmed their own new episodes with the original voices that look just like the real deal from the 60s.
That is very, very groovy, I've got to say. That would just be heading getting a 7-inch single playing at a 33 and a third. That just, your brain would just stick it on 45 by default. So
exactly. But you've got to admit, it's a pretty good gimmick, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's all power to the fans for doing it too. So well done to them. Puppets, yay team.
Yeah. So unfortunately, with the Stingray puppets, Pelham didn't do them, and it was a big step down. So you got these glove puppets with a head on, which are incredibly hard to get, but they're not that impressive. So it falls into that merchandise that's super rare, super expensive, and a bit of a letdown when you get it. Now, of course, if you find them, of course, you're going to be someone who collects this kind of stuff, so you're going to know how rare it is and how desirable they are. But for anyone else, when you go in and show them your collection and go, I just paid $5,000 for this puppet, how amazing, you're going to get like really weird looks, aren't you? Now, when I was talking before about I never knew they produced these, I'd be interested to know if Russell has seen these. He might have. They produced Stingray flippers, so you could swim as fast as the characters in Stingray. And they also had Tempest sand shoes, which were basically shoes that had Troy Tempest on the top of them, so you could look like a super dork. But they were two of the items when I was going through this going, I never saw those, and I've never seen those around. Across the top there as well, you can see that Stingray must have been a big deal, because that's actually a marketing prospectus catalogue that was sent out to different companies that said, this is the show that's coming up, this is the characters, why don't you buy the license and you can make toys of this. So they were really starting to publicize themselves and try and make themselves popular in the merchandising markets.
Absolutely love it. Now, as we said earlier, you love your hardware. Okay, you had your Fireball XL5. You can't do much of that. But what you can do is get yourself a Stingray and chuck it in the bathtub, and there's plenty of those to go around. So there you go.
Oh yes, Stingray was one of those things where they really did market it. Not seen those before, and I'm glad. But, the Stingray was a very cool vehicle, and they did market it, and there was various toys, from bathtub toys, remote control toys, floatable ones, die-cast ones. It really was a very cool spaceship that a lot of kids, it captured their imagination, so they wanted the Stingray. And the Stingray was available for many years after the show actually finished.
Oh,
sorry. Here's some other examples, and you can see there's the remote control one, and you've got ones in different scale and different versions. You've even got the Japanese one. A lot of there wasn't a lot of Japanese toys for Stingray, but it was one of those shows where it did make it over to Japan, and it did start producing its own merchandise over there. A lot of the Gerry Anderson stuff, especially Stingray, Thunderbirds, Captain Scarlet, had unique Japanese items that are quite hard to find.
Yeah, indeed. Absolutely love it. Now, we're talking about the fish earlier, which we've now discovered is a ship, not actually a fish. And I should have realized that because there's actually a picture of it here. But if you like your fishes, and it does actually look a bit like a goober fish, goober fish. Yes, check him out.
Now, I have to say, when we do this show, there's a lot of cool toys. Now, I don't know what it is about this, but this is like one of my favorite toys I think we've ever highlighted. And it is a tin plate wind-up toy. but it is a beautiful piece. I mean, if you look at that, the greens and the detailing on it, and the fact that you can wind it up and it's tin plate and the mouth opens and it does all different things, I do think that is an incredible piece. And I looked up if there was one to buy on eBay, and there is not one to buy on eBay, and they're very, very rare, and of course they don't turn up very much. But that is the terror fish, which I would have to say is one of the nicest toys that we've highlighted, and all it is really is a green fish.
Yeah, Aquamphibian. Yeah, now I was trying to think of the name earlier and I couldn't get it. So yeah, but that does look particularly groovy. So that's the kind of thing you just want us like just have cut the head part off and stick it on what do you call it? Like, or when you have them attached on shields, like your trophy, that would actually because look at the expression on his face. Is like it's that hard day at the office. And that would be kind of cool. Good stuff. All right, more toys.
So this is from the revival in 93. Who would have thought you could go into the toy shops in 93 and there would have been an entire shelf full of that's a classic toy, but I had seen it before, but now I really would like to get one. But Matchbox took the license up for Thunderbirds and Stingray, and in Australia we got the Thunderbirds stuff because Thunderbirds has been shown here for infinity on Channel 9 and Channel 7 first thing in the morning, but Stingray is long forgotten, so we didn't get any of these toys. And they're really amazing. Like Thunderbirds had the Tracy Island, but this had the Marineville headquarters, which is just as impressive and just as big. And then it had a series of figures and a series of vehicles. So you could get the Terrorfish and you could get the Stingray, and you could get the Stingray in different sizes. And the larger one, you know, fired missiles. And then the artwork on it is very reminiscent of the sort of 60s look, but it's updated for Matchbox in the 90s. So these, again, from researching this show, I'm like, I'm going to look at eBay and see if I can get some of these because I think they're a really great item.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you too. And you are right. Probably a lot of people have never seen them before. And they do look, just that box alone up there looks damn expensive just by the size of it. So,
yes.
Totally.
So it is interesting. You've got the Stingray here, and I was reading some interesting facts, and one of the guys was, before the show started, it was part of his background character is in a wheelchair. It's like a hyper wheelchair that he goes around in, and it was also one of the first shows ever to have a disabled character as one of the main characters. So it was quite groundbreaking in that way as well. And they were surprised that kids would want to buy figures of a disabled character, but they released it, and he, of course, did just as well as all the other characters.
Okay, that is an interesting one. And this is one for Rusky Babes. We've been watching this the entire time. Type out our bump, slamming out his fun factoids. And of course, as we know, Rusky Babes is a model builder, and this would be right up his alley.
Yes, so the Stingray did have many different models that stretch right back to the 60s and right forward to, you can still buy Stingray models today, and a lot of them would be the exact same model that goes to different companies and gets reissued with different artwork. But it is a particularly impressive model kit, especially if you put them together nicely. And you can see there's, I think, 3 or 4 different versions of the model kits in the middle and on the left of the screen. And then there's 2 of the kits put together on the right. One of them, I've got rid of the background, and the other one down the bottom, they put it in sort of a marine looking background. And it's a very impressive model kit. So it is one of those vehicles. I guess the whole show is based around Stingray, so it had to look good. But it does stand the test of time in that it looks like a classic vehicle still.
Yep, totally agree with you. And it would have been awesome to see on TV as well. Speaking of which, you could have done it on video.
Yeah, so this has been on video a lot of times. And I think what happened with videos, as soon as stuff was made in color, it became a lot more commercial to release on video. So where you don't get a lot of releases of the other Gerry Anderson stuff before this period, Stingray came out just as many times as like Thunderbirds on the Channel 5, I think, video collection first, and then different video collections over time. And this was one that was a lot more accessible. And we did get the videos, again, not in a general release in Australia, but in Minotaur. And I saw them constantly through the sort of 90s and 2000s when they were available there. And you can see from the packaging, I think a lot more, I guess, thought went into the release of the Stingray videos, in that they created a series that fit together, and you'd buy them in order, and then they did different versions and different releases and were popular for a long time. So this has been in the public's mind, I guess more in the UK than Australia, a lot more than some of the earlier stuff with Gerry Anderson.
So according to Rusky Babes, the Airfix one on the top left is actually a fake. So what do you think?
Go.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, they're not using they've just used normal text just there instead of like the actual logo text. So yeah, okay, fair enough. But yeah, good on them for.
You will find with models, there's a lot of kit bashed and garage kits and stuff that isn't licensed as well. And sometimes you could do a whole show on that. That would be a really fascinating show, actually, when fans can't get their hands on an official version of something. They'll actually kit bash it and produce a garage kit and sell it themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it's not a bad way to go if you just want one and you know it's not an original and it's just sort of been produced by somebody else, but it's the next best thing. A lot of people go for it, and good on them too. So, so you had the videos a moment ago, and of course you got the old DVDs to supplement it.
Absolutely. And again, this has been released various time on DVD and multi-box sets, and then the latest release is the super limited deluxe edition Blu-rays that comes with, which I really like. It comes with all the paperwork, uses the artwork from the 60s comics and toys. So even though it's modern books and information booklets, it looks like the original 60s comic and magazine releases, which is pretty cool. And up the top there, that 3-disc CD set shows you that there was enough unique music in it, and it was popular enough that they've released the CDs of the music over time as well, and they also are quite collectible, and a lot of people are after them just because this music was used in so many other Gerry Anderson shows, and it originated in Stingray.
Very good. And that actually brings us to the end of our episode, right on almost 10 o'clock. How good is that? What do you reckon, Mr. Aaron?
We're getting good at running these to time. I think like my voice just about made it all the way through as well, so that's great.
No, you've done very, very well, old son. And so there's a fair bit we've covered off there for shows. And I know I didn't put on the screen, but Gavin mentioned earlier that he'd never seen these shows before, and he's found the whole thing really interesting and fascinating. For a lot of people, it is a trip down memory lane. I guess the key thing is that despite their age of these products, there's a huge fan following for a lot of these particular shows. And it's good to see that, yes, they live on.
Yep. And so the next time we dip into the Gerry Anderson universe, it is the big one. It will be, the whole show will be on Thunderbirds. So I don't know if we'll do that next week or in a couple of weeks' time. It depends, I guess, on the feedback from this one. But for anyone who's been waiting just for Thunderbirds, because that's what they grew up with, that'll be the next one we do.
Absolutely, Mr. Aaron Tracy, sir. Fantastic. So there you go. All right, so we'll buzz off now because it's right on 10 o'clock. If you do end up getting any of your Fireball XL5 or Stingray collectibles, make sure you keep them mint in box.
Or rip them out of the card and put them in the bath with you and play with them all day.
There's an image of you. I'm just visualizing you in the bath with one of those fishes and the Stingray going, all right, here we go. Here come the bath. Oh, that's just going to stay with me until next week. So there you go. All right, leave you to it, guys. Have fun. We'll catch you then. Okay, bye-bye.
Have a good night, guys. Thanks for being here.